Hey everybody, another weekend upon us, another opportunity to go camping. In this video, we're actually going to be talking about a new toy I received a couple days ago, and this is the Wired Freedom e-bike. They were formerly known as Wicked e-bikes, and they changed their name recently. You've probably seen a few reviews. If you guys follow Citizen Cycle, you'll know he's done a pretty extensive review of these bikes. So I'm not going to try to repeat the great work he's done on his channel, but I will link his channel in the description below. But really what I want to talk about today is kind of my reasoning behind getting an e-bike, why I decided to make the investment, and what I'm planning to use it for. But before we do that, let me just go through some specs on this particular bike. And as you guys probably know, there's a big market for e-bikes right now. They come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. You've got your pass-through, you've got your bar ones like what I have here. You've got them with varying power, so you can get the little fold bikes, whatever. I bought this for a very few specific reasons, which I'll get into in a minute. But before I go down that path, let me kind of explain to you what this thing has on it. So as far as the battery is concerned, it's a 60 volt, 20 amp hour, 1200 watt hour battery system. So pretty powerful battery. The rear motor on this thing is a 2000 watt peak output motor. It is a single motor, it's not a dual motor. The controller that you see down here in the middle is actually a 40 amp hour 60 volt controller, so quite a bit of power to pass through to that motor. It is a 7-speed shifter, so it's got 7 speeds, similar to what you see on a typical mountain bike. And it's got 5 levels of pedal assist. So pedal assist on an e-bike means that when you're pedaling, it kind of feels like somebody's pushing you from behind. So the motor engages and it gets you varying levels of power depending on what you want to do and how fast you want to pedal. It does have the 26x4 fat tires, so they are pretty beefy tires. It is a 50-inch wheelbase, so if you're thinking about car racks and things like that for mounting this bike to take it with you, just know that you'll need to get something that has a 50-inch or better type wheelbase capability. The thing is 77 pounds with the battery installed. Without the battery it's 65, so it's about a 12-pound battery that sits right in the middle of the frame, so pretty hefty setup. What else is on here? It is a full suspension bike, so you might have noticed it's got a little suspension shock here, and I'll explain to you kind of why I went that route here in a second. But other neat little features, it's got BMX handling, so the handlebars are like a BMX rather than a mountain bike style. It does have a very bright front headlight, and it's even got a tail light. So when you've got the lights turned on, that thing is lit up. It's also a brake light, so anytime you apply the brakes, you'll actually get a brake light on it, which is kind of nice. Very fat and nice cushy seat, so very nice from a comfort perspective, which I really appreciated. And when it comes to the front suspension, you can lock out the suspension or you can leave it open, which allows it to flex up and down depending on your conditions and what you want to do with it. So this comes as a class 2 e-bike, meaning that it is governed up to 20 miles per hour. You can make it unrestricted by going in and making some configuration changes in the config panel. And Citizen Cycle has a really good write-up or really good video on all the different settings, what they mean, what you want to tweak from what you don't want to tweak. So if you want to make it unrestricted, you can, in which case I think the top speed is around 45 miles an hour. So it's a pretty fast bike considering you're doing 45 on a mountain bike basically. So I've had this thing for a couple of days now, and I've really enjoyed it. It has been a pretty good experience. I've never owned one of these things before. I've only ridden one once, and it wasn't a wired bike. A friend of mine actually has an e-bike that he let me try out before me buying one, just so I can get an idea of kind of what they're capable of. And I'll tell you some things that I learned by riding his. So he has, I think it's the Aventon bike. I'll put a link to the one that he has in the description below as well. And what's interesting about his is that he has no rear suspension in his. And when I rode his, especially off-road, it was a spine killer. The thing just basically crushed my spine if you're trying to stay seated while you're off-road. So that basically told me right there, I want something with rear suspension. In order to get rear suspension though, you can't get a pass-through bike. So you can't get one that's lower simply because it needs that bar for stability's sake. So just something to keep in mind if you're looking at a bike and you want to save your spine, the rear suspension is really the way to go. This thing also has hydraulic brakes, which work really well. So going from a pretty fast speed down to nothing is actually pretty easy to do. And again, they're hydraulic brakes, makes it pretty easy to stop. Some of the things that just as gotchas that I found when I was building this thing, so it does come mostly assembled. There's a few things you have to do, like you have to put the front wheel on, put the fender on, the light and all that stuff, and the handlebars. There was they basically put these little plastic guards down here on the wheel when you get it out of the box, and when you pull the plastic guards off, the little pin popped off and it's stuck inside there. So it took me probably 30 minutes to get that stupid little plastic pin knocked out to be able to put it onto the fork. It's a little annoying, but other than that, not too big of a deal when it came to putting it together. So why did I get this? Well, one, I want to be able to get outside and do a little bit more activity, simply because I enjoy being outside, but I don't really like hiking. I don't like walking. It's just real, at my age, it's a strain on my back and on my legs and stuff. So I wanted something that I could ride, but still have some sort of a throttle assist. That way I don't have to pedal as hard and it'll help me along. That's really from a health reason perspective. But more importantly, there's been a couple of camping trips that I've taken over the last year where I really wish I had some sort of an e-bike, just due to the dispersed nature of camping. And the most recent was Overland Expo West. So you'll see a video that I'll be releasing here pretty soon on my experiences at Overland Expo West. It was the first time I'd ever gone, and I got to camp with the Off-Grid Trailers group. So owners of Off-Grid Trailers got an incentive to camp together, and they put us in this little corral and all this other stuff, and there's a whole story behind that. But it was about a half a mile away from the actual event. So every day at the event, you have to walk a half mile in and a half mile out, plus whatever walking you're doing actually at the show. And there were quite a few people with bikes and e-bikes where they were zipping past us, and I was just thinking, man, that would have been so much better to have an e-bike. I could just race up to the show, not be fatigued by the time I got there, be able to get back to camp quickly if I needed to, which there were a couple occasions when we needed to get back pretty quick because it was about to rain. So it really convinced me that an e-bike was an appropriate choice for those types of venues where you're far away. So the further away you are, the more dispersed you are, the more you're going to want something like this, so you don't have to drive your vehicle up or any of that kind of nonsense. So that was really the reasoning behind buying a bike. Now, buying this one, why did I get this model specifically? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, it is classified as the most powerful e-bike on the market for the money. So this thing I think retails right now at $19.99, so just under $2,000. Trying to find another bike in a similar class, you're looking well over $2,000, $2,500 to $3,000 depending on what's out there. So economically it was really a good value in my opinion, and I've really been pleased with it. Like I said, being able to zip up and down the trails and stuff so far, really enjoyed it. So if you're in the market for a bike, I definitely highly recommend you take a look at one of these, the Wired Freedom. This is that model. And if you want a full-blown review, Citizen Cycle actually has a really good 2 or 3 videos of this bike, both from a speed test, longevity, some of the ways to unlock different features on the configuration, all that good stuff. So hopefully this has been helpful to everybody, and look forward to seeing you guys out on the trails. All right, thanks.